What's going on, everybody? My name is Ben and welcome back to the bench for another episode here on Rivals and Adversaries. We are back on our Corsair, and today my hope to go ahead and finish off this awesome model. So let's go ahead and grab the kit. Let's get going, see what we can do. Now, last time I worked extensively on the exterior of the aircraft. I applied all the top coats, all the primer coats underneath. We did some chipping, which I actually think turned out to be a decent little addition to this model. And I've done some detail painting like those wing walks and the black outlines. Covered everything over with gloss coat, so now we are ready for decals. We're going to be using this decal set by Eagle Cal. This is the Birdcage Corsair Volume 1. We'll be working on the details for White 13, flown by Kenneth Walsh, one of his many White 13s. And we're going to go ahead and see how these operate. I've never used a particular brand of decals before, at least not that I'm aware of. So it should be interesting to see how it performs. So I say let's just get in there. Let's start that time lapse. Let's go ahead and get some decals on, use a microset, microsol, just as usual. Then let's go ahead and throw the landing gears on there. And hopefully, fingers crossed, these go down perfectly. All right, let's go ahead and get this party started, guys. Let's see what we can do. All right, everybody, we are back. And first and foremost, those decals were awesome. They were so much fun to use. Very thin, beautifully printed. Just a little bit of microset there on the plastic. Dip that decal in water, put that decal down on top of there. A little bit of microsol on top of that decal, and it legit looks painted on. I'm very, very happy. The decals are super smooth, very thin. These you just barely dip in that water, put it off to the side, and it's ready within like 10 seconds. Amazing decals to work with. Now we have to go ahead though and move on to some of the details and start gluing on the fidgety parts, right? So propeller, exhaust ports, maybe the aerials, pitot tube, all that good stuff. And then we can start by doing some top coating, and then we can start weathering. Now for the exhaust, I'm a little bit worried about the exhaust because there's no locating pins, so I don't know exactly where they go. I've just got some pictures and a rough opening here. I'm just going to wing it, try my best, and get these positioned as I see in the pictures, and hopefully these will be okay. Honestly, the exhausts are a little bit lacking in detail, so that would be one area that I say maybe check out some replacement parts if they have any. Now, one thing I've been doing over the last couple of models that I'm actually really enjoying is I've been sanding down the wheels to give the aircraft a little bit more of a realistic stance. Now, all I'm doing here is taking a small sheet of 1000 grit sandpaper and just going ahead and sanding down the wheels just by moving the aircraft back and forth. Now, these are keyed, so I can't just pick any side and randomly start sanding something flat. I need to make sure they're installed so I know exactly where the wheel is going to make contact with the ground. I don't want to take off a huge amount. I don't want this giant flat spot in the wheel. I just want a little bit of that circular, kind of overinflated wheel to be taken down just a little bit. So it looks a bit more realistic and it looks like there's a little bit of weight sitting there on the gears. It's not too hard. Just make sure your landing gears are firmly glued in, and mine have both glue and super glue to tack them into place and to secure them up. Couple of swipes, nothing major. If we want more, we can take the jeweler files to it or just make a few more passes on even rougher sandpaper. So yeah, then we'll move on to a little bit of painting as well, detail up the exhausts as much as we can. And then I think we're going to move into our weathering, and the weathering is going to be very complicated and it's going to be a little on the tough side. I'm going to be winging it quite a bit because I don't really weather aircraft down to this level. Have never really chipped anything like this before, and I'm going to go ahead and try a bunch of different things, so this should be interesting. And of course, the first thing we have to do, we have to overcoat all of this, seal everything in with a top coat, and we're going to try something a little bit different. I'm going to go with something that I've seen Night Shift do, and we're going to overcoat this with a matte coat. We're not going to use our typical gloss future. We're going to go right to a matte coat, and as long as I don't let it sit too long, we should be able to work it, blend everything together. So we're going to jump into that time lapse, guys. Lots of experimentation going to be happening here. We're going to use washes, we're going to use panel liners, we're going to use colored pencils. I'm going to get in there, do some blending, we're going to use weathering powders, and we're going to see how it goes. So let's get on with it, guys. Let's go ahead and put the last few finishing touches on this bird, get this thing looking a little bit dirtier and a little bit more used. Let's finish up our Corsair. All right, everybody. We are back, and I gotta tell you, flat out, I have had so much fun on this model. We are all finished up with our Corsair, and I think it's probably one of the best models I've done so far. Not to say it's perfect. There's a couple little areas, little issues here and there, but honestly, I had a blast. Let's go ahead and grab the kit, and I'll show you our finished product. So here we go. This is the 1/48 scale Tamiya Birdcage Corsair, the -1 version. Just absolutely a blast to build. Everything from construction to scratch building to detail painting to weathering. It was very much a learning curve, but also it was super fun. Let's go ahead and zoom in here and get you a close up. As you can see, I added in a lot of different details, and I tried my hardest to go ahead and match the photo that I have of White 13. So I tried to keep the weathering in areas where it showed in the references and where other Corsairs usually have a lot of traffic. Like for example, around the different wing walks, the front of the leading edges right here where there'd be some maintenance. Of course, that fuel filler cap usually leaked fuel, so it got some stains on there. I tried to add in dirt, grime. I took my time. I blended all the washes together, added in layer after layer, and just worked up slowly, just kind of building up the color. And I think it actually turned out to be a decent looking build. It took us a little bit longer to get there, but we got there, and I absolutely love how this kit turned out. Now, most Corsairs look completely disheveled. I tried to kind of back it down a little bit because my references didn't show exactly that. It showed a little bit on the cleaner side, but still fairly heavily weathered and pretty dirty with stains and whatnot. And I tried to capture that here with the model. Now, I do have one gripe with the model, and that's actually with my decal placement. As you can see, these stars are a little bit too inward. They should actually be on the other side of the ammo bay doors. Right now, they're kind of overlapping the very end of it. And what I was doing is going off the instructions on my decal sheets. So that's kind of upsetting. I also did some research and I added in some kill marks here from the Tamiya kit. All the White 13s had some kill markings on them. I've seen pictures that have 4, and I've seen pictures with 3 kill markings. I decided to go 3 kill markings circa 1943. So if nothing else, at least captures the spirit of the aircraft. And I think it adds a bit of color to it as well. Now we go ahead and flip this over. I did a little bit of weathering on the underside, especially around the exhaust ports. Wanted to make that as dingy and dirty as possible. These Corsairs did have quite a bit of exhaust staining. You'll see we do have that window down here. I decided to leave it unpainted. Sometimes they painted over them in the field, but I wanted to have that little extra interest there. You'll notice I did add in the nav lights, and of course I added in some of the landing gear covers and the weathering there, add little panel washes here and there, of course some weathering powders as well, trying to make it look a bit dirtier, but without going overboard. On the front of the aircraft, you will notice I do have that panel that's a little bit lower on that demarcation line. The others are raised, and most of the reference photos I saw of this aircraft had a feathered effect between the blue and the gray. So that's what I did. I also added in one little navigation light back here on the spine. That's actually sourced out of an F9F Cougar kit that I built a while back from Kitty Hawk. I also went ahead and added in some of our aerials. You'll notice I used that easy align stuff, and I know it's not necessarily the right profile. It's a bit flatter, should be a bit more round, but I think it gets the job done, and it's very easy to fix if we need to go ahead and get back in there. I did add a little bit of a twisted wire at the very top here. I think it's like an insulator or something. I want to try to add that in. I've got 2 connection points, one there on the side of the fuselage, right behind the cockpit canopy, and then of course one up here on the front aerial. So that's all strung together and tacked in with super glue. And so far so good, I think it works out. Now in the cockpit, I did add a little bit of extra detail there on the gun sight, and I glued in that armor plating and I painted it black around the edges. So that actually looks pretty good. I like the effect, and I think the cockpit was one of my favorite things to work on here, adding in seatbelts and wires and all that good stuff. So really happy with how that turned out for sure. Now, just to reiterate here, these decals were fantastic. This is part 1. There's actually, I think, 3 parts to this series. In fact, they give you enough of the markings to go ahead and do the other 2. So you can legit build 3 Corsairs out of this one set. So you know what that means, right? I got to go out and get myself 2 more Birdcage Corsairs. Now, in terms of washes and weathering and all that, guys, I actually used a couple different types of washes, mostly by MIG and by AK. I used this kind of a sea blue wash for the different blue areas, tinting panels and whatnot. And I used this stone gray for other areas, like, for example, toning down the white on the stars and then just shifting colors here and there, not only on the gray, but also on the blue to add a bit more color variation. That worked out beautifully. I also used a little bit of this North African desert wash that I've got here. I didn't use a lot of it, but I used just a tiny bit around the entry point for the cockpit on the right side of the wing walk and those steps. So I think that's a nice little touch. And lastly, we went ahead and used quite a bit of this AK panel liner. This is a one for the blue and gray camo colors. It didn't blend nearly as well as the other washes, but I was able to achieve a little bit of a darkening tone here and there. And of course, it got into the panel lines and worked perfectly. So yeah, pretty pleased with that. And all the washes and the panel liners were blended together using just some AK odorless thinner. This stuff works great, and I was able to go ahead and just kind of blend the different panels together and shift the colors here and there. And to go ahead and seal off all my work, I went ahead and used some matte varnish by Winsor & Newton. I absolutely love this stuff. I've mixed it with Future to make a semi-gloss coat. Right here is pure flat right out of the bottle. This was a fantastic model. I had so much fun with this one. I know Joe is now up on the Corsair, so I'm interested to see what he decides to do. And I'm going to go ahead and shift over to our Zero. So next episode, we're going to jump into that Hamp. But this honestly was such a fun model, from the weathering to the assembly to the scratch building. Highly recommend the kit for anyone who loves these early Birdcage Corsairs. But anyway, that is it for us today, guys. We're going to go ahead and shift our attention over to phase 2, which will be our A6M3 Model 32. So until our next episode, guys, you know the drill. Go out there, get yourself some bench time, have some fun, build something cool. Make sure to drop on by Joe's channel, check out his Hamp, turned out beautifully. And we'll see you back here on the next episode for Rivals and Adversaries and episode 1 of our A6M3 Model 32. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you soon.